So Dave Shanley is our next presenter. He is a CEO and co-founder of Notion, and he has over 20 years of experience managing agile software teams. Go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you. God, it makes me sound really old. Thanks everybody for coming. So I'm gonna cover speed, accuracy, quality, and joy, and how I discovered the secrets to aligning and running great teams. So I'm Dave. I'm a software developer. I'm also a dad to my son Ben, and I'm a founder of two startups, CrowdCompass. You may have heard of it. It's here in town, and Notion, which is a new company, also here in town. And being a founder is sort of like being a dad, a sibling, a friend, all in one, with plenty of mouths to feed. And at the end of the day, it's all about aligning and driving great teams. Because if you aren't continuously improving, then you're not going anywhere very quickly. And that led me to, as we built up these teams and I've grown these companies, it led me to thinking deeply about what makes them continuously improving and what makes them successful. And it brought me to this idea of team intelligence. So the formal definition that I found, ability of a group of individuals to tackle and manage complex and non-routine situations together. That sounds like what we do every day, all day. And the more I thought about team intelligence, I thought about people and the decisions they make. And so the products that you're building, they're a direct result of who we hire and the decisions they make in the development of that product. And for me, that really boiled down to what information are we giving those teams, those people, those individuals to make the right decisions. Because we want evidence-based decisions. We want people to not go with their gut, but to actually base it on fact and the information that they have at hand. So it requires this feedback loop in the build, measure, learn cycle. If you're familiar with the lean startup, you have this concept of this build, measure, learn. The problem, though, that we found was that, okay, build, we're pretty good at measuring. Learning is a little bit more challenging. And as we scaled up, specifically as we scaled up CrowdCompass from one sprint team to multiple teams, we found that it was really, really hard to drive alignment on the team, to have a decision framework and an ability for the team to focus on the best product decisions at hand to get to the desired results. And we had this problem that surfaced time and time again at retrospectives. And it showed up as broken retrospectives where the conversation was about at the wrong level. Here I had built my dream team. Everybody's working together. We had everything at our disposal that we needed. But the one topic kept coming up at retrospectives, it was snacks. It's like, we need better snacks. And it's like, what? Wait a second. Why are we talking about snacks when we should really, what's going wrong with the conversation? And the funny thing is, I just heard the same problem about snacks echoed at the Atlassian conference that I attended last week. Another team lead was having a challenge with this. So that led me to these three measurable characteristics of great teams and a secret for us that helped unlock the team potential. So looking specifically at retrospectives, you've got, this is a great book, Agile Retrospectives, Making Good Teams Great, Diana Larson. She's speaking, I think, here in the next couple of weeks. She's here in town. Set the stage, gather data, generate insights, decide what to do, and then close retrospective. I mean, that's a great kind of framework for decision-making in general. But this is pretty hard, to go from the gathering data phase to deciding what to do. And that led me to think about, well, what data matters most in that gathering data phase? What data matters most to my team for them to be successful? And it led me back to the first principle of Agile, delivering value to the customer. Right? The whole focus is delivering value to the customer. But we have to be able to measure those forces that are at play, those tensions that are at play when we're delivering value to the customer. And that led me to thinking about it this way. Process, alignment, and value. Process, making sure that we execute. Alignment, making sure the team is executing at the right vision, along the right path. And value, that we're actually delighting customers, that we're delivering that amazing product to customers. And so what are we going to measure? Between process and alignment, we have speed. It's not just velocity, but you need to measure how quickly you are achieving both along that path, that alignment and that vision. And so we measure things like cycle times. So we started measuring cycle times on the team to help get visibility into where the pitfalls and where we needed to spend our time improving and taking action. So identifying those gaps in productivity. Also addressing work in progress. So making sure the team's not taking on too much at any given time. And then also measuring iteration flow, so seeing our teams evolve, iteration to iteration, and making sure that that work in progress is being represented there. That led us to looking at accuracy. So you can build quickly, but if you're not building the right thing along your vision, then you're not going to delight users. You're not going to deliver that value to users. So you've got speed on one hand, accuracy. How accurately are we delivering to the specifications, to what the product that we want to deliver? And so in measuring accuracy, we started tracking point commitment reliability. So understanding, hey, are we taking on and planning the right amount of work? And is there a lot of volatility in our path to achieving those accurate results? And started measuring throughput. So an indicator of success, an indicator of our accurate delivery of software, not the final piece, right? Not the end all, but these are prompts to start the conversation. Is the team struggling to move through and deliver bugs, chores, features? And finally, this is a topic that most people struggle with on the accuracy side, and it's measuring feature adoption. So in that build, measure, learn loop, as you ship the software, are you actually measuring adoption by the customers? Is it delighting the customers? If you're not measuring that piece, you're not closing that loop. So you can deliver quickly or slowly. You can deliver accurately along that path to customer value. But what else is at play? You can build quickly, you can build the right thing, but if it doesn't work, you're not delivering quality. So those are the main forces at play when running your teams, and it's a very, very powerful way of stepping back and thinking about, hey, are we measuring the right things and incentivizing the right behaviors? And for quality, you can look at things like delivered story churn. Right? If the team's not set up for a successful sprint iteration, or if you're using Kanban, right? If they're not being fed a high-quality backlog, then they're not going to deliver quality results. So you can look at story churn and bounce backs as a measure of that. Bug count. However you want to measure it, however detailed you want to get, tracking bugs is obviously important to quality. Escape bugs. Total bugs. It's the more I think about the quality aspect of delivering delightful software, I start to think about, hey, what are the markers for tech debt? And that's kind of the next area that I'm going to be diving into, personally, is how do we get an accurate measure of tech debt? But quality is certainly quality indicators surface that debt. Are you having the right conversation about quality on your teams? And defect removal efficiency. So this is the ability for the team to remove bugs before they hit production. And everybody has a different tolerance for this, but in this case, specifically defect removal efficiency, a high defect removal efficiency is good. It means we're pulling out a lot of bugs in the development process versus the bugs that will ship into production. So those are kind of some of the measures that we started to distill and look at on a regular basis. And it was really it was that aha moment of, hey, like these forces are in tension, right? Speed, quality, accuracy. And as you're having conversations at the management level, you can present this as a way of, a data-based, evidence-based decision-making process in the sense of, hey, what are the trade-offs? Like, where do we want to trade speed for accuracy? Do we want to trade accuracy for quality? Like, these are at odds. And so coming back to the retrospective example, generating insights and deciding what to do. So we've got some data. We've got our work in progress, our throughput, our quality metrics. But this is still hard. Like this process of going from generating insights, what should we do next, and then what are we going to do is actually pretty difficult. And that brings me to the fourth piece, which is the center of all of those, of the intersection of the process and the intersection of the alignment and delivering customer value. If you don't have a happy team, you're not going to be delivering along this quality path. And the way we got here was we thought about Net Promoter Score. We use Net Promoter Scores externally to measure customer satisfaction. Can we look at that internally? Can we use something like Net Promoter Scores internally to gauge and surface issues, team happiness and surface issues? And initially the team was not overjoyed at the prospect of running something called Net Promoter Score internally. But then we thought, well, would you do it for more snacks? And something really, really interesting happened is that we started to see different conversations happening. And that was really the joy aspect, the team measurement of team happiness that's missing from some of these conversations, that's missing from these retrospectives and delivering conversations at the right level. And as we've built out Notion, and this is actually a core feature of what we're offering, we've seen our customers take this and evolve it and go further down the path and have these amazing conversations that they've never had with their team if they weren't, completing the picture of that puzzle of the speed, accuracy, quality, and adding the joy component, the team happiness component, but in a really tactical way. Not just simply, are you happy, but asking specific questions along those dimensions, along the process alignment, customer value dimensions, along the speed, accuracy, quality dimensions. And those examples are, how well were we prepared going into the sprint? So the way we do this is anonymous polling, simple 10-point scale. How well prepared were you? Like, that's a pretty awesome question because if you're not prepared, you're going to see that delivered story churn spike. You're going to see that you have product management issues and you're thrashing the teams. And it's not going to be a surprise. This gives you actual data, evidence-based decision-making power to go and have that conversation at a higher level. Team communication. If the team's not communicating well, effectively, they're not going to build accurate or high-quality software. So these are qualitative views on top of how your teams are doing, but they're very, very specific, and they are as close to leading indicators as you can get and looking out for issues. Sprint productivity. How productive did we feel as a group? You've got your hard measures, the velocity, you have throughput, you have those kind of that kind of data coming out from your tools, the pivotal tracker, Jira, okay? But asking this question, if there's a perception gap, if the team doesn't feel productive, but all the numbers say they are productive, that's a conversation. If the team feels really productive, the numbers say they're not productive, that's a conversation. Delivered value. Do we deliver value to the customer? Do we deliver a high level of value to the customer? Again, it's an amazing conversation starter. If the team doesn't feel that they're delivering high value to the customer, then the retrospectives and from a continuous improvement standpoint, that's the place to address it. And this is probably my favorite one, release confidence. Getting to the core of measuring quality. A lot of times people, abstracted away from the process, upper management, even product managers or project managers, will feel like, hey, yeah, thumbs up, we're ready to release. You ask the team, and they're not. They have a low view of the quality that's about to go out the door. That's a great conversation starter, because if you're not asking that question in that really tactical way, you're not getting the results, and you're not having that conversation. And what's the potential outcome of having that conversation? Roadmap excitement. Is your team motivated to continuing to deliver? Right? Are you pushing them too hard? Are they not prepared for the sprints? But are they excited about the roadmap? You have, in any given, the tools at your disposal for running teams, you have a way of managing these different tensions, right? You have a way of trading these things off. If the team is at an all-time low about the roadmap, well, it's time to feed them more interesting things to keep them engaged, deliver great software. Looking at our team dashboard today, this is a snapshot of what it looks like. We measure a bunch of different things. You can see throughput, cycle times, our iteration flow is important. We have velocity. You can see the release confidence is represented here. And the cool thing is as you ask this over time, you start to get baselines and trends. And it's an amazing opportunity for having a really substantive discussion when you have this qualitative data trended out and visualized. You go into manager or upper management's office and say like, hey, we've got an issue with the team. They're unhappy or whatever, and it's just like if it's just hand waving, that's one conversation. If you can go in with a structured conversation and show, hey, we've got some data here trending. It looks like the team's being pushed too hard. The hard numbers are good, but the qualitative, the sentiment is trending off. Like that's a completely different conversation. That's no longer about your gut. That's no longer about how you feel. It's about how the team feels, and it's about how those trends are appearing in the data that you have. It's amazing how that radically shifts the conversation. And that's exactly what we can see here, just seeing those trends over time. And a lot of teams, we personally struggled with, product management, not enough product managers, and we were like thrashing the teams. And, but at the other end, you had executive management wondering, why are we not producing more? But you had all of these indicators, had we been measuring them at the time, you had all these indicators of, we've got delivered story churn, we're slowing down because we're not being fed high quality requirements, and there's a lot of the team time spent hashing that out during our iterations. So very, very, very enlightening for us to come to this conclusion. Hopefully that's helpful. And so I wanted to run through an example. This is a sort of real world example that will illustrate what I'm talking about. If you've got the situation where as a company or as a group, as a team or a set of teams, you're worried about, say, customer churn. And customer churn's on the rise. You're measuring, these, customers are not renewing. You've got a subscription product, software product. So what do we do? What do we do to reduce churn? We have to make a decision as a group. This is something we want to tackle. Sales wants to add new features. Hey, if we add new features, then customers will stick around. Engineering wants to improve features. And on the product side, hopefully they're saying, well, okay, let's look at the data. Let's have a meaningful conversation about what we know. So can we deliver more features? The velocity looks great. It looks like we're increasing over time. Can we push the team harder? If we push the team harder, maybe we can deliver more features. But looking at those really tactical indicators, this is sort of an aggregate view, but team morale is dropping. See how that rounds out that picture? Velocity alone or throughput alone, how much we accomplished, isn't the whole picture. The team's view on that completes that picture, and being able to actually measure that is a really simple but really, really tactical thing that you can do coming out of this. So, maybe we can shift throughput, right? So the team's morale is dropping, but increasing velocity is risky. Maybe we can shift throughput, but guess what? We're already sacrificing bugs for features. So if you look at our throughput, here this is new feature development. We've already been sacrificing taking out our bugs out of the system for new feature development. So trading that off even more, really there's not really anything to trade off, but at the same time, that puts us at risk for quality and technical debt. And if we ask the team, we can see that delivered value is also dropping. Like they don't feel that they're delivering value to the customer, as much value to the customer. Again, like that's where it helps to fill in those gaps. Those like really insightful team polls help to fill in those gaps. And finally, if we measure quality, looking at defect removal efficiency, where higher is better, higher means more bugs taken out of development instead of finding them in production, we see that dropping. And that's a hard measure that's coming out of our tools. We can see, okay, and we're confirming it with our open support tickets on the rise. This is the final nail in that coffin, the last piece of the puzzle. That wait a second, well, maybe we shouldn't really add new features. Maybe it's more about making the features that we have better, right, and retaining those customers. So that's the enlightenment that we arrived at, that I arrived at, running a bunch of teams at a bunch of places, seeing a lot of success, seeing a lot of struggles, seeing some failures. And I hope that it helps enlighten you guys and adds another dimension to how you're tracking your teams. I love building out decision frameworks. Decisions are so much easier if you build a framework around those decisions, right? And if you start thinking about it like speed, accuracy, and quality, and those measures, and optimizing for those tensions, and making sure that you add in that sentiment, that team sentiment, that completes that picture, then you can better align your teams around data that you already have. You already have this information. It's at your fingertips. It's just really about using it. We've got a couple of great, in Notion, we've got a couple of great email courses. They're super simple, easy to sign up for, where we talk about little data. We consider this little data. These are the things that really matter. Escape bugs, that's little data. It matters a lot. So that's the school of little data. And then we also have the ART. That's the acquisition, activation, retention, referral, revenue, like the pirate metrics. And then we added team to that. So a little bit more detail on really diving into some more weeds on some of the metrics that we recommend to track. I'm happy to open it up to questions. Talk about any of this. I don't know if all the other speakers are doing questions, but yeah, excellent. I know that was maybe a lot of stuff pretty quickly. In the back. Accuracy. So going back, it's more along the lines of customer value and activation. So this is generalized, but this is feature adoption. Like, did we build the right thing? So this is like the ultimate arbiter of did we build the right thing. So looking back, the example here is L7. L7 means last 7 days. So if you've instrumented your product, hopefully you've instrumented it to some degree, but having a really detailed focus at the beginning of why you're building something. So we write briefs going into any new feature development, any new product development. So briefs around, what have we done so far? Why are we doing this now? Specifically, like, why are we building this now, as opposed to just why are we building this? And then what does success look like, and what does failure look like? So having preconditions for success and preconditions for failure, so we understand what the parameters are, and then so you arrive at this place where you're measuring usage. If you should set out targets for usage. If people aren't using what you built, then it's probably not necessarily that accurate. And you can also measure it through, from a process standpoint, you can also measure it for, like, delivered story churn. So if you see a lot of stories like go to a started state and then bounce back, then you probably have some accuracy issues where the team's not very well prepared that will impact your speed. Another question in the back? So the question was confidence, and because it's coming from people, it might not be as reliable. We found both internally and we found also with our customers that are using this process that it's all about starting the conversation, and it is really valuable. One, the polling that we do is anonymous. Some teams prefer non-anonymous polling. They've got a different team culture, but in the product, it's anonymous. We look at all of the results, so all the results come in. Every individual result. It's it's anonymous, but you can see it too. If the low scale is if it's low is lower numbers 1, 2, 3. If that comes in and the rest of the team is high, we still have a conversation. Why? Hey, someone threw out a 2. Why would anybody be at a 2? And that usually sparks a good conversation, and it helps elevate voices that would otherwise not be heard. So it's not. It's at the end of the day, it's not simply about decision making. It is about sparking that conversation, and we found it to be really effective. Because perception also matters. If the team is perceived as not confident, if their own perception is that they're not confident about the release, there's usually something there.
Are you looking for anonymous feedback too, in addition to just the questions of what's your confidence level as to be able to explain?
Yeah, we capture text comments around that as well. Yeah, and it's really the process has actually literally changed people's retrospectives, which is awesome to see. And some teams that have come on board, they were already doing it anyway with a show of hands and things like that, show of fingers on hands.
You mentioned high-quality backlog. So what makes a high-quality backlog? And if you have any tips to make a successful high-quality backlog?
Yeah, so the question was what makes up a high-quality backlog? It's one where, so I'm very much a believer of sort of just good enough and just in time. It's one where the team is confident, not in this polling sense, but the team can run with what's provided and meet the accuracy goals, the activation goals, whatever success is for that feature through the end. And it can be measured again with things like delivered story churn, things like that, and then polling the team. Were you prepared for the sprint? Plus, was there a lot of churn on the stories, or even a lot of points entering your sprint or iteration if you're running that way inside of your start time, right? So if you see a bunch of points added afterwards, that's not a good indicator. If you see a bunch of stories bouncing back and forth in state, from started to none started, that's not a good indicator. And then if you poll your team around sprint preparedness, that's also a contraindication. So, it's agile is very much agile and lean are very much the ways I think in running a team. Most people are. So you're not going to have this huge prepared backlog, but what you do have should not have those contraindications. And what we measure internally is what do we call it? It's backlog. It's essentially a backlog burn down, and we look at the velocity of the team over the backlog points that are prepared, and if that gets to a level that's too low, then we're going to thrash the team. So imagine if your team's moving to simplify things at a 10-point velocity. And so that's new feature development, right? And if the backlog of planned work is, say, 20 points, then you are essentially ahead of the team by 2, right? 2 iterations. Any more than that, and it's probably unrealistic that you're going to be having the right and an easy way of prioritizing things. And then any less than that, if you're in 1 or 0.8, 0.5. If you're below 1 iteration, then you're going to thrash the team because the requirements simply won't be ready for the team to start work on. Oh, I mean, it's like when you introduce a new concept, people are always skeptical that it's going, with an existing team of whether it's going to work. And taking something like Net Promoter Score, which they feel is maybe just for the customer service or success team, it seems like a little bit foreign. But we see like a really high participation rate, both like our own team, we participate, but also with customers, and they're running it. And it's so lightweight. I mean, the idea is to make it as lightweight as possible. And we run it, we know a lot of teams that are running it weekly, that are doing this weekly to gauge it as they move through their work. So if you have 2-week sprints, if you're working that way, then kind of lightweight polling every week, and just something that you look at, every Friday or whatever makes sense. So just kind of get out ahead of issues. And we don't recommend asking and polling about like the world, not 10 questions or 20 questions. It's like really targeted, handful of questions. Again, thinking about your process and, are you really focused on speed? Are you really focused on quality? And kind of emphasizing those different dimensions that make sense for your teams in the right period of time. Another question. Hey, Lori. Yeah, that's why I love having structure, like some structure to conversations. It's great to have obviously open-ended brainstorming and things like that. But the more decision frameworks you can put in place, both like on the product management side, on the software development side, the easier life you are going to live. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can throw up a copy of the slides. There is a copy on my slide share. I don't know how I can send out a link to all of you, but I'll find a way. But if you search for my name, so I can go to the end here. Yeah, if you just look up like D. Shanley on SlideShare, there's a copy that has some annotations. It's like a little bit easier to read. Basically, a copy without the example run through is already up there. That'd be helpful. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Good luck, build quality software, enjoy the rain.